Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. All right, we are welcoming Jamie to the podcast to share her NFP journey story. I'm so excited to have you here, Jamie. Could you start by just giving us a little introduction to you and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jamie. I am a full-time engineer, but started to really dive into my faith when I was in college. So that's kind of when I first learned about NFP. But I also have an Etsy shop that I do kind of like on the side. I make rosaries and stuff like that. But yeah, engineer, graduated college in 2020. So I've been doing the engineering thing for about a year. I work in manufacturing, so it's very hands-on. I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. My husband is a manufacturing engineer, so.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah, I know that life. I don't live that life, but oh man. All right. So tell me about when you first heard about NFP and what was like your initial reaction to hearing about NFP?
So honestly, I keep trying to think of the exact moment when I actually heard about NFP for the first time, and I just can't remember what it was. I think the first time I heard about a method was on the Catholic Feminist podcast. Don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
Yeah.
And she had someone on and they talked about Creighton. So like, I think that's the first memory I have. And honestly, I was at a point in my faith where I was like starting to dive into it. So everything that I was learning, I just like loved. Like I just accepted it because I think I was kind of at a vulnerable place when I started. And then once I like saw how beautiful our faith really is, just everything that was coming at me, I was just like, this is all so great. So I didn't really question it at all. It made sense to me. And then after listening to that podcast, I kept coming across like more podcasts and stuff like that talked about NFP. And I just thought it was so cool. And then I ended up going to SLS 20 through Focus. And I talked to the people that they had like their booth for Couple to Couple League. And I remember I stood and talked to them for like 30 minutes about awesome. NFP. So it was just like something that I thought was so fascinating. And from that moment, I just didn't understand why more people weren't talking about it because I thought it was so cool. And I had spent like 20 years of my life never hearing anything about it. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy how I happened upon it. And then we got engaged about 6 months later. So then we got to take the classes and learn even more. So it's all really crazy how it all laid out, but I'm so happy I learned about it.
Yeah. Well, that's just such a beautiful story that you were able to learn about it. And not only were you able to learn about NFP in general, but also you did have an awareness of the fact that there were some different methods. And you were able to learn about it like before getting engaged. And so then when you got engaged, it's like, oh, great. Okay. Like next step, I know what to do now. It's not like it was served to you on a plate, like, 3 months before you get married, like, oh, by the way, you got to take one of these classes. And you're like, what?
Yeah. One of my friends actually recommended we take them sooner than I was planning to. And I'm very happy she did that because we originally learned symptothermal through Couple to Couple League, but part of the reason why we chose that one is because I was trying to use the links that our church gave us. Mm-hmm. And the only one that made sense to me was Couple to Couple League because I couldn't figure out how to like schedule classes for the other ones. And I was like, oh, this one tracks a bunch of signs. It'll be great. And honestly, like tracking mucus just doesn't go well for me. I take a medication that can affect my mucus pattern. So I didn't really trust what I was seeing. It didn't go well. And then we ended up learning Marquette as well, sort of at the time that we got married. And that is so much better. So I think I'm just very grateful that we had so much time because I was able to like kind of get a grasp of like, okay, this isn't working super well for me. It's kind of stressing me out and I'm seeing some things that are weird. But yeah, it's like, there's still so much out there that I don't know though. So I keep trying to learn and I feel like, and now I'm pregnant. So like, we're not charting at all. So now
it's a totally different story.
It's like, I'm going to have to start thinking like, oh, postpartum tracking, what's that going to look like? But I heard Marquette's great for postpartum. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to switch to that one. Just because I didn't want to think about learning another method while I was preparing for a baby, if that makes sense. So
No, I get that. I get that. I am honestly like in my brain, I'm doing like this little happy dance because I love that your story involves the fact that you had time to actually, in fact, like, so learn a method, realize it wasn't the right fit, and learn another method, like before or kind of, before and kind of during getting married. And so you weren't like overwhelmed right when you were married, figuring out like, oh, wait, this is really not a good fit for me. I'm just like, I'm so happy that that was your story. And I just hope and I pray that many more women who are in similar situations, like that can be their story too. It's just awesome.
Yeah, definitely happy about it.
Oh man. Okay. So how did learning natural family planning, how did learning about natural family planning, like change your like outlook on life or change your marriage or did it at all?
Yeah. So one thing that I always think about is learning NFP and learning how my body works and just all of the intricate ways that God designed us. It's also beautiful that it just made me love the Catholic faith more, but also just made me like feel so much closer to God and so much more loved in a way. And then also learning it with my now husband, like even when we were engaged, we were like talking about these things and it was just normal conversation. So I felt like we were communicating about a lot more things and it just opened that up so much. So I can tell we've grown closer through that. And it's amazing. And I wish more women knew this stuff because when you learn how you were created and like this is how God made you and learn all the details, it's mind blowing. And I love it so much.
I am so with you there. Like, I am amazed at like how my body works like through these different seasons of life and through cycles. And I know like I was so fascinated after having my first child, like it was a frustrating time because there was a lot of abstinence, but I was fascinated by the fact that, ovulation was suppressed while breastfeeding and then how I literally got to watch my cycle get like kind of healthier and back on track as I started cycling again. It was like the first cycle was like super weird, really long, like, but then phase 3 was like super short. So it was so weird. And then like the next one after that, like got a little more normal. And then, each cycle that happened got closer and closer to like kind of a normal range. And it's just like, it's so interesting. It's like, wow, like look at what our body is doing. Look at what God created and wanted to have happen. Yeah, NFP isn't all like rainbows and butterflies, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess another thing that stuck out to me is like, I've always kind of had trust issues throughout my entire life, but understanding the reasoning for why we use NFP opposed to contraception, it requires so much surrender and trust in God. And I know like it was just like a few months before our wedding, like for the longest time, we got engaged and we're like, we're going to wait a couple years to have kids. And, we got married in November. So obviously that did change. But like, it was just like a few months before our wedding. And we kind of just sat there one day and we're like, do we actually like have a just reason to wait? And also we're like, we actually feel called to be parents right away. So it like forced us to ask the question and actually approach that together. And it was like such a beautiful moment because we both just felt utter peace. And then about 5 or 6 months into marriage, like we did conceive and we've been so excited since. It's like everything laid out so beautifully. And it just makes me trust God even more because everything just has been so good and he's just so good.
Oh, that is fabulous. Yeah. And I agree. Like NFP just allows for those conversations, those really good conversations to happen when they should happen. So I love that you and at the time, future husband, like actually sat and realized like, wait a second, why would we be waiting a couple of years? For some people that is what they're called to, and that is what they discerned is needed, and that's completely fine too. But like, I love that was kind of the takeaway that you guys got. I think that was similar to my husband and I, that we hadn't intended on waiting quite a bit longer before we had our first. Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day we're like, wait a second, why are we waiting? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, that's kind of, and then it's weird after that. We felt a lot of peace with that decision. And like with my job, like working in manufacturing, like I'm on that, and there's, being an engineer, there's not a lot of females in engineering. And honestly, they haven't really had a pregnant woman in the office for many, many years. And I've never seen someone pregnant in the office. So I was kind of nervous about that kind of stuff. But every time those thoughts would come up, I'm like, I can't predict how this is going to go. I can't control the situation. So I would just push that away. Like, nope, I want to be a mother ultimately before anything else. But it ended up working out great. Like my coworkers are all so excited for me. It's been
fabulous.
It's all been good. Everyone's so supportive, which I wasn't sure how people were going to react, but they're all excited. They all say congrats. I got a few hugs from some of the guys, but it was all good.
Awkward engineer hugs. Those are the best.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man. If you haven't gotten to experience that yet, you need to go find some friends who are engineers. Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. I'm just going to like comment on that just a little bit of just how the enemy wants to take our fears and just wrap them up and make them way bigger than they are. But in fact, when you stepped away from the thoughts and you're like, no, you know what? I can't control this situation. I can control how I react. I can't control how anybody else reacts. And it was, a wonderful, wonderful situation where everyone reacted well and supportive. And that's wonderful. All right. Tell me, I feel like we've kind of discussed your favorite things about NFP. Do you have anything else that's like kind of a favorite about NFP?
So my favorite thing is probably the reasoning behind NFP and why we do it. Because I constantly think about how if we hadn't decided to pursue NFP and weren't really forced to ask the question if we were called to be parents, like there's a good pregnant right now, like I could be, God's plan. But I guess I just feel so grateful for like this baby and like this life that we've been given, because I don't know what the alternative might have been. And this just feels so right. And I just feel a lot of peace in that. Yeah.
That is so awesome. So tell me a little bit more about just kind of the reasoning behind NFP. And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I think there's a lot of reasons why as Catholics we're called to practice NFP. What specifically really like draws you to NFP or draws you and your husband to NFP?
I guess to me, first of all, it just makes sense. When you learn about your natural cycle of your body, how there are infertile times and fertile times, it just makes sense that God has given us exactly what we need. We don't need any chemicals or anything to go into that part of the marriage, but also the importance of that part of your marriage and how, it is supposed to be a total self-gift. And in introducing like barriers or chemicals into that, it just really goes against that. And I just feel like the total loving aspect of it kind of gets diminished. Like you might still be loving your spouse in that moment with contraceptives, but I could not see it being the same, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And like NFP, I feel like rightly orders your mind with that stuff. Like my husband and I were just talking the other day. It's like our like marital intimacy for us is more of like a being close to one another is what we desire. It's like the pleasure isn't even what we necessarily desire. And it's just like, that's mind blowing to me because I feel like we live in a society where everyone's after the pleasure, but it's like NFP has completely like rerouted that and been like, no, I just want to be close to my spouse. And like, I find that mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
but also just like honestly, biblically, it also just makes more sense, you know? But yeah, just all of those things, I guess.
Jamie, that was beautifully said. All of what you said. I'm not even really gonna like comment on it. I think that was just awesome. Like, I could not have said it better at all. All right. So we've talked a lot about all the things that we love about NFP. Tell me about your least favorite aspect of using NFP well, I guess your family, yes, but in your marriage.
Yeah. So initially it was very hard for me. Like this was before we were married. When we first learned NFP, it was honestly very hard for me to get tracking consistent. Um, taking my temperature at the same time every morning. Like I'd forget, or like I said how the mucus thing didn't work for me. And that kind of came out of, having a few months where I just like basically didn't track mucus because I just forgot. Felt very stressful for me because I'm like, because also we weren't living together. So it was also harder for him to be involved. So I was kind of like, I feel like I'm not getting good charts because, I feel like I don't get consistent temperature readings or mucus readings. So Marquette helped a lot with that. But still, I feel like just trying to be consistent with charting has definitely been the hardest part for me. I know how important it is, but I don't know why. It's such an adjustment. Like you just wake up in the morning, you don't worry about anything, you go do your thing, and then you start tracking for NFP. It's like, oh, you have to get up at the same time every morning and take your temperature. And like, that was so tough for me in the beginning. But once I started Marquette, that helped a lot. And I was much more consistent. And I still do the temperature. Well, I was doing the temperature still before I was pregnant, but I was still doing the temperature just because I wanted another sign and I was doing the temperature at that point. But yeah, for me so far, it's definitely been just trying to stay consistent. But I'm sure postpartum is going to have its own hurdles to cross. And I already think about that. I need to get signed up for a class about postpartum charting because I feel like that's just going to be something I need details and I need step-by-step instructions.
And luckily, that's what our instructors are here for.
Yeah. I'm glad they exist.
Yes, I know. If we were only supposed to learn like just from books and online, like, oh my gosh, NFP would be so much harder. But going back to, the consistency with charting, yes, I agree. That is a difficulty that we don't talk about a lot because when we're learning to chart, first off, like this is a brand new thing. This isn't something that we started doing like when we were 6 or something and we've been doing our whole life. Like, why would you chart when you were 6? Like you don't have anything to chart, hopefully. But yeah, like having that consistency in like daily charting is really, really tough. And something that I really advocate for any moms out there who have, daughters somewhere in the range of, 9 to 13 who are premenarchal is when your daughter starts cycling, not that she needs to learn a method or like truly chart everything out, but get her started with, charting her period and get her familiar with kind of thinking about those kind of things. And then as she shows more interest, and hopefully she will, because I haven't met a single person who has learned NFP and hasn't been super interested in what it shares about the female body. So your daughter probably will get interested. Then, continue to encourage her to chart different things like that before even learning a method, because then when she goes to learn a method, she's going to be so much more set up for that daily aspect of charting that can really take some of us off guard. If you're not that type of person who like can easily just add something into your routine, I'm definitely not that type of person. I remember like having trouble with the thermometer because I do a symptothermal method. And it was like, it took so long for me to make that a part of my routine. And then, oh man, then you don't use it when you're pregnant and you don't use it during the postpartum. And then you got to like learn it again. So yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole nother adjustment after I have the baby. And I've been thinking about that a little bit too. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be 9 months of nothing. And then all of a sudden I need to like try to start thinking about it again. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. I do honestly, I like the break that, that like pregnancy gives you in charting, because sometimes charting can just, it's just a lot to chart. And like, so it is kind of nice to have a break of like 8 to 9-ish months of not charting and not having to think about it at all. It's like, oh yay.
Yeah, I'm just kind of coasting through, not thinking about it at all.
Yeah. But then it's like you get the break and then you have postpartum and it's like a lot harder. So you have to like really think about it. So anyway,
yeah,
not to freak anybody out for getting pregnant.
My whole mindset is, oh, God will provide. It'll be fine. I'll do my best.
It'll be fine. It will. It really, really will. And you'll pick it back up. It's easier to pick it back up after a break than like starting from scratch, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your story. This was awesome. Do you have anything else you wanted to add in about just your experience with NFP in your marriage, or anything else?
Whenever we were sort of discerning if it really was time, like if we should try to be parents right away, I honestly had a really big fear of like pregnancy and birth. And I was afraid of pregnancy because I would have panic attacks every time I puked. So the idea of morning sickness was very terrifying. Because I have, like, my mom, she would get sick. She got sick all 9 months with us 3 kids. I have 2 siblings.
Oh my gosh.
But she would dry heave. So she wouldn't actually puke every morning, but she always got sick in the morning. So I had like that I was like, oh no, I hope that's not me. And then just like with birth, you know, like knowing how painful it could be and like just all the stuff that goes into it. It was scary for me. But that was another thing where it's like, I knew that those fears were not rooted in something good. And I knew, you know, my body was made for all of this. So if I was feeling called to be a parent, then I can't say no to that call, even if I have some fears. And I remember the first couple of months after we got married, honestly kind of scared that I was going to be pregnant. I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. But I also was like, you know what, God, it's in your hands. I'm trusting whatever you have in store for us, because we do want to be parents. Like, and I know everything will be fine. And then like when we did finally get pregnant, honestly, I didn't really have either of those fears anymore. It's almost like I had the time to kind of be like, that desire just like amplified every single month. And then whenever we conceived, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I felt a lot of peace. And then like I have a lot of anxiety before the morning sickness hit. But honestly, I just like prayed for strength to get through it, because I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. And that fear is now gone. Like, bother me at this point, which is just a blessing. And then like when it comes to birth, it's just like, I honestly feel empowered about it now. It's like, I'm not afraid. I'm just like, well, my body's made for it and it's going to be great. I'm going to get to hold a baby at the end. Like, that's the best prize ever.
Yeah. You get a really good prize after giving birth.
Yeah. So like, if anyone's listening and has those fears, I guess I just want to reassure them that like God hears those and he will provide for those, the strength. But yeah, that's just another part of like the whole discernment process that I kind of had to take into account, especially with like mental health. It's like, I didn't want to overdo it or like force myself into something, but, looking back, it's like God has provided every single step of the way, and he always does. He just needs us to say yes. And I know this was all his will. So I'm just like, every time something goes wrong, I'm like, God, you take care of this, because I'm not sure what's going on. But yeah, it's just been beautiful. I'm so grateful. I really am grateful.
Oh, Jamie, that was just such a great witness of just turning turning our fears, turning our issues like over to God and saying, I need you to take care of this, because he wants to take care of those things for us. And yeah, those fears are real. And you should absolutely like take those into consideration when you're discerning, but also discernment means that you have to welcome God into that conversation. And so what a beautiful witness to really, truly welcoming God into that space, in yourself and saying, okay, I need healing right here. And he was like, absolutely. I'm here for you. I'm here for you, child. I'll heal you.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Jamie. This was such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you ever have any questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to me. My email is in the show notes, and you can also reach out on Instagram. Until next time.